Okay, we're back here, and I've got the new cell hooked up, and when it has, there's the voltage of the cell. Give it a little pressure, and you've got 400 millivolts. Let me disconnect it for a second. Could you hold the camera, Kenny? Could put the voltage on the millivolts at 400 millivolts consistently. Push it together a little bit because it's just a taped together cell. There. Here's my electrolyte. It's clear. Aluminum as the negative and stainless steel as the positive. It's about the cheapest battery you could ever get. And having the positive be stainless steel makes it corrosion resistant, but there is no corrosion. This is not a galvanic reaction. This one's gold, but that's rather expensive, and you see there's no difference in performance between stainless steel and gold for the electrode.
And that represents a single cell of about a half a volt.
Right.
So if we stacked 100 of those things together, we would have 50 volts.
So how many thousandths are in an inch?
Yes. When the thing is only a little thicker than about the same thickness as a thin business card.
Right.
That's
It should be enough to slip behind your battery on your cell phone.
You know how big a box of 1,000 business cards is? Like that. That's about 8-10 inches like that. We could make some pretty beefy, robust assemblies of these. Scale this thing up.
Right.
Imagine you buy a car and it's charged for the rest of your life. Or no, the point is the car, the bearings and everything in the car will wear out before your battery runs out.
Okay, so back here to the milliamps. We have it hooked up to the milliamps, and it's pegged. It's dead short. Let's see how many millivolts again we're pulling. Go back over to the meter. Now the digital. Oops. We have 30. Like if I could keep the thing on there. Here, go back to the meter. This meter. Somewhere between 30 and 40 millivolts. You just have to do the math and figure out the wattage, microwatts. But it really doesn't matter because it never depletes.
Well, I can say this is a historic revelation.
Thank you, Art.
Historic revelation. I've never seen anything that's more eye-opening than what we're looking at tonight.
Now, if you remember, Art knows a little bit about magnetism because he owns Magnetic Arts, but Art is also, let's refresh them again. What was the best thing that you patented that was the best for our generation? Point the camera to Art. The magnetic recording head?
Well, whatever we do, as it says on our new cards, there's always a better way. Whatever we do.
Art Divine patented, sold, ran the business to bring the recording head from 1 megabyte to 1 gigabyte. So he's basically a living icon.
Well, it's really from 10 megabytes to 500 gigabytes.
Right.
The first disk drive, hard disk drive we got here in 1972 cost an extra $1,100 because instead of a cassette drive memory like that, it had a hard disk on it for 10 megabytes, and they accidentally left that in. It was like pulling nails to get me to pay another $340 for that 10 megabyte disk drive in the early 1970s.
That's incredible. Kenny, while I'm cleaning this up, will you take my phone and just take your quick tour through the shop? and
Sure.
show them the shop just really quick, like 2 minutes.
I'll avoid the mess.
Yeah, avoid the. Go back to the machine shop so they can see it again.
The lights are off.
Just let him have a quick view of the shop. I like to. I know every time when I do videos, I like to.
Kenny
show,
lives and breathes and stuff.
yeah, I like to show people your shop.
See the demo on the farmer facility. How it works.
This is machine shop back here. We have 2 lathes, milling machine, old drill press, Delta, surface grinders here, tumbler, Yoshigawa surface grinder, couple of kilns, the usual hot plates, cool plates.
It shows that magnetism comes from its life.
It's astonishing. I mean, I never seen any material I ever touched. Kenny, there's no material I've ever touched, ever handled, looked at, that would ever make a digital voltmeter tell that story. That's what you just saw this evening.
Thanks, Art.
Never saw anything like that. I mean, you can hook it up to a battery of any known technology we have, come back 20 minutes later, it's all pooped out. This thing isn't phased. What does that say? I mean, everything Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or things like that is like kindergarten compared to what this pretends.
Earlier on your microscope, I took some video of the graphene oxide coming from microbial, and you could see that it's moving all the time. It's alive. This is not graphene oxide. This is even much better than that. Graphene oxide doesn't usually make electricity, but it's a supercapacitor.
Well,
But you can see it in the microscope. It's consistently moving. It does never stop moving, which was really incredible. So this here, this is clearly microbially activated, and it doesn't need food.
Intrigued with your observation that possibly all the metals that are occurring in the earth evolved through biological processes. It's an interesting thing, because one thing we know, in my experience mining and prospecting for gold, it came through a violent shock like that, where the quartz is all fractured, and the earth was impregnated with this when pockets are found. They didn't evolve slowly. They were made in a few milliseconds by some either extreme shock wave that occurred. Now, whether later this became all the different metals and noble metals we have, something determined why silver is silver, and why something similar to that is nickel and vanadium and all these other things. How did we get this incredible succession, which we've identified through the atomic table, atomic number system, like that? But it may have been somewhere in the thing that it's an organic process, because there's no copper wires in the electric eel. It's just tissue. But where can you get almost a lethal dose of electricity from an organic battery that's living even, like an electric eel? And the funny thing about it, nobody talks about it or discusses it beyond grammar school arts and crafts. What an amazing thing that what this proves. I mean, you've got to go back to see what is the magic of the electric eel. Everybody heard about it, but I never heard about it after grade school. What's going on here?
There's only one place that I can think of that there's a depiction of potentially electric eel. In Egyptian writing, the hieroglyphics where they have this big light bulb looking apparatus where the guys are holding up this huge light bulb, and there's some sort of a worm or eel or something inside of the light bulb. Are they representing electricity? Did they use an electric eel in there to create some sort of electricity from that reaction? I have no idea.
I can contemplate bioluminescence because it rubbed it on my fingers when I was a kid when I smashed a firefly.
Right.
Like that, you see?
I think bioluminescence is cold fusion.
I had glowing fingertips. Oh boy, if I knew that would knock me off my feet like an electric eel, I would think twice before I did something like that. Nobody would swat a firefly if it had the same mechanism of an electric eel. Smack and you get electrocuted. Well, that's what would happen if you did treated that electric eel underwater. How is that possible? There's got to be a whole new realm of what now would be considered magic, but it's a reality like that. And this is the closest thing that rings the bell, especially when David Pucht talks about the organic origins of these substances. That makes sense. I wouldn't agree with it, except for what I learned in grade school, that there's such a thing as an electric eel. There's absolutely no metals in it. And when you put it on an X-ray machine, it's transparent. Yet, that can generate 4-figure voltages that'll knock you all over the place. Wow.
This is all coming from a biological side, from the ground up.
There's got to be something. I can't believe the universities and everybody are so neglectful. They shove global warming down our throats as this is the thing we have to spend most of, and when there's actually magic going around on the thing. And there's another way to measure negative gravity. We only weigh things according to the apparent force they exert on a scale like that. And we say that's the mass of something. No, it happens to be just the moment of gravitational attraction to the Earth. But when things don't agree, we come up with a new name for it. We call it an isotope because things don't add up to what they're supposed to weigh. So it means that there are, until we use resonance to determine mass, we'll never know really how heavy something is. Because it could have negative gravity material. So there's always more mass in the material than the pressure on the scale indicates. There always will be. It's a small amount, but once we discover the differences, we'll be able to, I think a negative gram will be worth 1,000 times more than a gram of gold. It would be interesting to be able to refine and separate rare earth materials so they actually fall up. And that's maybe the thing, when the volcanoes come, we only get the stuff that falls back down. We don't see the equivalent of a solar wind, which is always leaving. The comets are obviously negative material because the particles are always flowing away from the sun, not towards it. Why does the comet's tail point towards the sun? That's the source of gravitation. No, the solar wind is negative matter, and it keeps on going, leaves our entire galaxy, while the negative material from other galaxies must be the things that's raining down on us from everywhere else. Like anything that's very old gets buried very deep in archaeology. So there's a reason for everything, and there's no such thing as accidents anymore. These are all, we set ourselves up for all the discoveries as well as the intended consequences of our neglects and the greatness of our explorations. I think that's enough for one second.
Thank you, Art.
God bless.
Thank you. Good night. And from Art Divine Magnetic Arts.